Ambassador Kralthek stumbled into the human council chamber, his 4 arms shaking from pure exhaustion. The tall, blue-skinned alien looked nothing like the proud warrior he had been just months ago. His fancy robes were torn and dirty. Dark circles surrounded his 6 eyes. He had traveled halfway across the galaxy to reach this moment, and it showed. The human orbital station buzzed with activity around them. Officers walked back and forth carrying data tablets. Warning lights blinked. On the walls, everyone could feel the tension in the air. Something big was happening, and everyone knew it. The Void Swarm has completely destroyed the Centauri colonies, Kralthek said through his voice translator. The device made his words sound robotic and cold, but the fear behind them was very real. 3 billion people, all dead in just a few hours. Couldn't save anyone. Mike Thompson sat forward in his chair. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. The holographic screens in front of him showed terrible pictures. Planets that used to be green and blue were now brown and black. Huge craters covered their surfaces where something had eaten away at the ground itself. "Show me the attack patterns," Thompson said quietly. Kralthek's hands moved over his control device. New images appeared in the air between them. The humans watched as dark shapes moved across space like hungry animals. These were the swarm ships, but they didn't look like normal spaceships. They looked alive, with skin instead of metal and tentacles instead of weapons. "Our best warships attacked them first," the alien continued. His voice cracked with emotion. "We used our most powerful energy weapons. For a moment we thought we were winning. Swarm ships were taking damage. But then something changed." Captain Lisa Rodriguez, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. "They adapted," she said. "It wasn't a question," as Kralthek nodded sadly. "Within minutes, our weapons stopped working. The swarm ships grew new armor that made them immune to our attacks. Then they started eating our ships, literally eating them." The room fell silent, except for the hum of computers. General Robert Hayes, an older man with a white mustache, rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He and Rodriguez had shared a look earlier that didn't go unnoticed. They seemed to know something the alien didn't. "How many worlds have fallen?" Thompson asked. 47 systems in 6 months, Kralthek replied. "Each time they win, they get stronger. They take the metal from our ships and the energy from our weapons. They use it all to make more of themselves. We estimate they now have over 10,000 ships." The holographic display changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the fallen worlds. The pattern was clear. The swarm was moving in a straight line toward the most populated areas of space. The alien homeworlds lay directly in their path. "Our greatest minds have tried everything," the ambassador continued. "We built new types of weapons. We tried different battle tactics. We even attempted to negotiate with them. Nothing works. They don't communicate. They don't stop. They just consume everything in their path." Thompson studied the alien carefully. "And now you come to us." "Yes," Kralthek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We come to the humans, the young species that everyone said was too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous to join the galactic community." He paused and looked directly at Thompson. "Maybe that's exactly what we need now." Rodriguez stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth. The blue planet spun slowly below them, peaceful and beautiful. But she knew what lay hidden beneath that peaceful surface. Manufacturing plants that never stopped working. Weapons research facilities buried deep underground. Millions of people ready to fight at a moment's notice. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Thompson said, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Kralthek fell to his knees. All 4 arms stretched out in front of him. It was the ultimate sign of surrender in his culture. "Help us fight them, please, before they reach the core worlds, before they destroy everything we've built over thousands of years." The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Finally, Thompson spoke. "We'll consider your request." Dr. Emily Carter's fingers moved quickly across the control panel as Earth's most important leaders gathered around her. The underground command center was buried 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, protected by layers of steel and concrete that could survive a nuclear war. Red emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls as classified information filled the air around them. "The data is worse than what the alien told us," she said, her voice steady despite the terrible images floating in front of them. The holographic displays showed planets being stripped down to their cores. Entire star systems going dark as the swarm consumed everything. Planets, moons, asteroids, even the stars themselves seemed dimmer after the creatures passed through. President David Wilson stood with his arms crossed, watching the destruction play out in 3 dimensions before his eyes. He was a tall man with gray hair who had seen many crises during his time in office, but nothing like this. "How long do we have?" he asked quietly. "At their current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies of the Galactic Council in 18 months, Carter replied. "After that, it's only a matter of time before they find Earth." What Ambassador Kralthex didn't know, and what the other alien species had never suspected, is that humanity had been watching this threat for much longer than anyone realized. Hidden sensors placed throughout the galaxy had been sending information back to Earth for over 30 years. Humans had been tracking the swarm's movements, studying their behavior, and learning their weaknesses. Colonel James Mitchell stepped forward and activated a new set of displays. Suddenly, the room filled with images that made everyone gasp. Massive construction projects appeared in the holograph shipyards, the size of small moons hidden behind Jupiter's largest moon. Weapon testing facilities built inside hollow asteroids. Manufacturing plants that stretched for hundreds of miles beneath the surface of Mars. "The Titan shipyards have been running at maximum capacity for 15 years, Mitchell announced. His voice carried the pride of a man who had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "We've built over 400 heavy battleships, each one designed specifically to fight biological enemies." The president walked closer to examine the images. The ships didn't look like anything the aliens had ever seen, or alien vessels. Were smooth and elegant. Human warships looked like floating fortresses covered in armor and weapons. They were built for one purpose: to destroy everything in their path. "Operation Blackout has been our most classified project," Mitchell continued. "We've been preparing for exactly this scenario since we first detected signs of the swarm 40 years ago." Admiral Thompson nodded as he studied the tactical displays. His weathered face showed no surprise at the revelations. "Humanity learned something important during our early wars," he said. "The universe doesn't care about being fair, it doesn't care about being nice. If you want to survive, you have to be ready for the worst possible enemy." Major Kate Sullivan activated another screen showing weapon specifications that would have terrified the aliens. "Our weapons aren't designed just to fight the swarm," she explained. "They're designed to completely eliminate them. We've developed viruses that attack their biological systems, plasma weapons that burn so hot they can destroy their adaptive abilities, kinetic rounds that punch through their armor like paper." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what they were seeing. Earth hadn't just been sitting quietly in space, hoping for peace. They had been building the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. "The other species think we're young and primitive," Wilson said finally. "They see our short history and assume we don't understand galactic politics." "They're wrong," Thompson replied. "We understand perfectly. We understand that in a universe full of predators, you either become the biggest predator or you become food." Carter brought up one final display showing production numbers that made everyone's eyes widen. "We currently have 12,000 combat vessels of various sizes. Our manufacturing capacity can produce 50 new ships per day. Our weapon stockpile could arm 1,000,000 soldiers." Mitchell smiled for the first time that day. "The aliens came here begging for help because they're desperate. What they don't realize is that they just woke up the one species that's been preparing for this war longer, and they've been running from it." The president looked around the room at his advisors and military leaders. "Then I guess it's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." The first human warship emerged from behind Jupiter like a sleeping giant waking up. Ambassador Kralthex pressed his face against the viewing window of Admiral Thompson's command ship, his 6 eyes wide with shock. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times larger than the biggest alien battleship he had ever seen. Its black hull was covered in scars and burn marks from countless weapons tests. "By the ancient stars," he whispered, his translator barely catching his words.
"A what?"
Is that thing? It's the Titan's Revenge, Captain Rodriguez said casually, as if she was talking about the weather. One of our smaller dreadnoughts. Before Kralthex could respond, another ship appeared, then another. Soon the space around them filled with human vessels of every size and shape. Massive battleships with gun barrels as long as city blocks. Fast attack cruisers bristling with missile launchers. Carrier ships that looked like floating cities, their hangar bays glowing with the light of thousands of fighter craft. Impossible, Kralthex breathed. How long have you been building these? Ships! Rodriguez turned to look at him, a small smile on her face. Since we first detected your little galactic civilization about 50 years ago, we knew this day would come eventually. The alien ambassador felt his legs go weak. You've been preparing for war for 50 years? Not just war, Thompson said from his command chair. We've been preparing for the kind of war that decides who lives and who dies in this galaxy. Kralthex watched in amazement as more ships continued to appear from hidden bases throughout the solar system. Some emerged from behind asteroids that had been hollowed out and turned into massive shipyards. Others rose from beneath the ice of Europa, their hulls dripping with frozen water. A few even came from what looked like empty space itself, cloaked stations that had been invisible to all alien sensors. Commander Brian Kelly worked at a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls as he integrated alien technology with human weapons systems. Their energy shields are pretty good, he said to Rodriguez. But our kinetic weapons don't care about energy shields. What do you mean? Kralthex asked nervously. Kelly looked up from his work with a grin that made the alien uncomfortable. Your people fight with energy beams and plasma bolts. Very civilized, very clean. But humans learn to fight differently. We throw big chunks of metal at our enemies very, very fast. To demonstrate, Kelly activated a display showing human weapon specifications. Kralthex stared at railguns that could fire projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed.
Kinetic.
Bombardment systems that could drop telephone pole-sized tungsten rods from orbit. Missile systems that carried hundreds of warheads, each one designed to punch through the heaviest armor. Your weapons are so primitive, Kralthex said, confused. Primitive but effective, Thompson replied. While your people were developing fancy energy weapons that can be adapted to and defended against, we perfected the art of hitting things really, really hard. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communications station, her headset crackling with reports from across the fleet. Admiral, all ships report ready for hyperspace jump. We have 347 combat vessels in formation.
General.
Hayes studied the tactical displays showing the assembled human fleet. The ships were arranged in perfect attack formations that spoke of years of training and preparation. Then I think it's time to show the galaxy what Earth's children can do when they're properly motivated. The space around them began to shimmer as the hyperspace engines powered up. Kralthex had never seen so many ships prepare for jumps simultaneously. The energy readings on his instruments went off the scale. Where did you get the resources for all this? He asked in wonder. We strip-mined half the asteroid belt, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. Turned most of our gas giants' moons into industrial complexes. Built fusion reactors inside Mercury's core. When humans decide to build something, we don't mess around. The hyperspace jump began with a flash of light that lit up the entire solar system. One by one, the human warships disappeared into the swirling vortex of hyperspace. Heading toward their first battle with the swarm, Kralthex felt his stomach drop as their own ship made the jump. As the last human vessel vanished from normal space, automated monitoring stations throughout the solar system came online. Hidden weapons platforms emerged from asteroid fields. Defense satellites that had been disguised as space debris suddenly activated their targeting systems. Earth hadn't just sent its fleet to war. It had revealed that the entire solar system was one massive fortress built by a species that understood one simple truth. In a dangerous universe, you're either the predator or the prey, and humanity had definitely chosen to be the predator. The Vega Prime system looked peaceful in the early morning light of its twin suns, but that peace was about to be shattered forever. Captain Tyler Brooks stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, watching as dark shapes appeared at the edge of the system. The swarm had arrived, and they brought death with them. Contact at bearing 27 Mark 4. His sensor officer called out. Multiple biosignatures incoming. Count is... ... God, there are thousands of them. Through the view screen, Brooks could see the swarm ships emerging from hyperspace. They didn't look like any vessels he had ever seen before. These weren't built, they were grown. Massive creatures of living flesh and twisted metal, each one the size of a city.
Ow.
Their surfaces pulsed with veins that glowed with sickly green. Light. Tentacles writhed where normal ships would have weapon turrets. All ships, this is Admiral Thompson, came the voice over the communications system. Remember your training. These things adapt fast, but they're not as smart as they think. They are. Brooks activated his weapons systems as the first wave of swarm creatures rushed toward the human fleet. The bioships moved like living animals, twisting and turning through space with impossible grace. Their surfaces began to change as they detected the human weapons targeting them, growing new armor plates and defensive spines. Fire plasma batteries frequency 3, Brooks ordered his weapons officer. Let's see what they do with that. Bright blue energy beams lanced out from the human ships, striking the swarm creatures directly. For a moment, it looked like the weapons were working. The bioships screamed, actually screamed, as the plasma burned through their living holes. Several of the smaller creatures exploded in bursts of green blood and twisted metal. But then, something changed. The remaining swarm ships began to shift and adapt. Their skin grew thicker and more reflective. Within minutes, the human plasma beams were bouncing harmlessly off their new armor. They're adapting to our weapons, Brooks' tactical officer reported. Plasma effectiveness down to 12% and falling. On the alien ships, watching the battle, Kralthex felt his heart sink. It's happening again, he whispered. Just like with our fleets, they'll adapt to everything the humans throw at them. But Admiral Thompson's voice came over the communications channel, calm and confident. Switch to plasma frequency 7. Let them think they're winning. Brooks smiled as he relayed the order. The human ships began firing different types of plasma, each one slightly less effective than the last. The swarm creatures grew more confident, clustering together as they adapted to each new frequency. Their bioships began to merge, forming larger and larger creatures that they thought were invincible. Phase 1 complete, reported Major Janet Phillips from her command vessel. She was coordinating the entire battle from a safe distance, watching as the swarm fell into the trap. Enemy ships are grouping as predicted, initiating Phase 2. What happened next would have shocked every alien species in the galaxy. Human ships suddenly stopped using energy weapons entirely. Instead, they opened fire with weapons the swarm had never encountered before, weapons that couldn't be adapted to. Because they weren't trying to destroy the bioships, they were trying to poison them. Viral bombs exploded against the clustered swarm creatures, releasing clouds of engineered diseases that attacked their biological systems. The creatures' own adaptation abilities turned against them, as the viruses forced their bodies to change in ways that weaken them, instead of making them stronger. Biological warfare protocol activated, Phillips announced, as she watched the swarm ships begin to convulse and writhe in space. Toxin levels rising across all enemy vessels. But the humans weren't done. Colonel Mitchell's voice crackled over the radio from his position near Vega Prime's largest planet. Planet crackers are in position and ready to fire. These weren't normal weapons either. The planet crackers were massive siege weapons designed to split entire worlds in half. But instead of targeting the planet itself, they were aimed at the swarm's breeding facilities on the surface, the living hives where new bioships were grown. Fire when ready, Thompson ordered. The planet crackers unleashed beams of pure destruction that burned through the planet's atmosphere like hot knives through butter. The swarm's breeding facilities, each one the size of a major city, simply vanished in flashes of white light. With them went the swarm's ability to replace their losses. In space, the poisoned bioships were dying by the hundreds. Their own adaptive abilities had become their weakness, as the human viruses forced them to change in ways that shut down their vital systems. The creatures that had seemed invincible just minutes before were now floating dead in space, their bioluminescent veins growing dark. Enemy fleet strength down to 30%, Brooks reported as his sensors swept the battlefield. No, 20%. They're dying faster than we can count them. Kralthex stared in amazement as the tide of battle completely reversed. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm, they had turned the creature's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. By the time the battle ended, the Vega system was lit up with the burning wreckage of over 2,000 swarm vessels. The tide of the war had finally turned, and it had turned in humanity's favor. The final battle lasted only 6 hours. Ambassador Kralthex watched from the observation deck of Admiral Thompson's flagship as the last swarm hive world died beneath a rain of human plasma bombs. The massive planet, which had once pulsed with the sickly green light of billions of swarm creatures, now glowed red-hot as its surface melted under the intense heat. "It's over," he whispered, his forearms pressed against the reinforced viewing window. Below them, the debris field stretched for thousands of miles, the remains of the swarm's primary breeding facility and the birthplace of countless bioships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him, her face calm as she watched the destruction. 3 months, 17 days, and 14 hours, she said quietly. That's how long it took us to completely wipe out a threat that your people couldn't handle in 300 years. Kralthex felt a chill run down his spine. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm, they had hunted down every last creature, destroyed every breeding ground, and eliminated every trace of their existence. The thoroughness of it was both impressive and terrifying. "You didn't just defeat them," he said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. "You made them completely extinct." Rodriguez nodded without emotion. "That's what humans do when we go to war. We don't just win battles, we end threats permanently. There's no point in leaving an enemy alive to rebuild and come back stronger." Throughout the ship, human officers worked at their stations with the same calm efficiency they had shown throughout the entire campaign. There was no celebration, no cheering, no victory parades. They'd simply done their job, and now they were preparing for whatever came next. On the main communication screen, President Wilson's face appeared. His message was being broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy, a feat of communication technology that surprised even the most advanced alien civilizations. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just proven his people's power beyond any doubt. "The swarm is gone. Every hive world has been destroyed. Every bioship has been eliminated. Every trace of their existence has been wiped from the universe." He paused, letting the words sink in across countless worlds. "The galaxy is now under Earth's protection. Any species that wishes to continue existing peacefully will find us to be fair and reasonable neighbors. Any species that chooses to threaten innocent life will discover why the swarm is no longer a problem." The transmission ended, leaving alien governments scrambling to understand what this new reality meant for them. The humans, who had been dismissed as young and primitive just months ago, had just announced themselves as the galaxy's new dominant power. General Hayes stood in the tactical center, studying star charts that showed the former swarm territories. These were vast regions of space that contained hundreds of systems rich in resources and perfect for colonization. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered his staff. "I want forward bases established in all former swarm territories within 60 days. Start with the systems closest to major trade routes." Colonel Mitchell activated a new set of displays showing human colonial fleets that had been waiting just outside the combat zones. "Long-range exploration fleets are standing by for deployment. Beyond the galactic rim, sir, ready to begin mapping unknown sectors." The scale of human preparation became clear as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. These weren't military vessels, they were colony ships, mining platforms, research stations, and industrial complexes. The humans had been planning not just to win the war, but to expand across the entire galaxy afterward, Kralthex realized. With growing horror that his people had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just asked for help, they had awakened something that had been quietly preparing to take over the galaxy for decades. The humans had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. You planned this from the beginning, he said to Rodriguez. The war, the expansion, everything. She turned to look at him with those cold, calculating human eyes. We planned for every possibility. The swarm just happened to give us the perfect excuse to show the galaxy what we're really capable of. Across the galaxy, alien leaders were receiving reports that chilled them to their cores. Human ships were already moving into former swarm space, claiming entire systems as their own. Human mining operations were stripping asteroid belts bare. Human research stations were studying alien technology with disturbing efficiency. The age of alien dominance was over. In asking humanity for help, the galaxy had traded one threat for another, except this new threat was intelligent, organized, and had just proven it could eliminate any enemy completely and permanently. Earth's children were no longer content to stay in their small corner of space. They had tasted Galactic War, and they had found they were very, very good at it. Expansion had begun, and nothing in the universe was going to stop it.